The Grand Hall of New Geneva buzzed with tension as Theos's holographic display filled the air with streams of data. The blue-skinned alien's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he gestured at the flowing charts and graphs that painted the room in cool, ethereal light. "Our studies suggest the stories of Earth's unique qualities might be overstated," Theos said, his translator giving his words a metallic edge. He tapped one of his long fingers against a particularly dense cluster of information. The massive form of Archon Atlas dominated the center of the room, his hologram towering over the gathered diplomats like a mountain made of light. "Think of what we could achieve together." His deep voice rumbled through the chamber. "Your species has shown remarkable growth in such a brief span." Jackson leaned forward, his weathered face set in stone, jaw clenched tight. "We didn't just grow. We fought for every inch, scratched and clawed our way up from the dirt." "Through plague, war, and disaster," Reyes added, her voice sharp as a blade. "We earned our place here. Nothing was handed to us on a silver platter." Nova, the crystalline being from the Collective's Science Division, chimed in with a sound like tinkling glass. "But how did you survive? The statistical probability of overcoming so many extinction-level events, it defies all known models." "Neural plasticity," Kovalev cut in, adjusting his glasses with a practiced motion. "Our brains adapt, we change, we overcome. It's not just about surviving, it's about learning from every challenge." Meanwhile, in the dark space beyond Pluto's orbit, Admiral Moros's fleet slipped through the void like shadows on black velvet. His ship's hulls absorbed light and sensor waves, using stolen codes from the ancient beacon to mask their approach. The stars themselves seemed to bend around their presence. On his command bridge, Moros watched the tactical display as his purifier squad prepared their gear, checking weapons and armor with practiced efficiency. "Look at their cities," he muttered, zooming in on Earth's glowing metropolises. Their weapons, their resilience. The Collective was blind to not see it before. All this time. His fleet crept closer, invisible to Earth's standard detection grid, each vessel moving with deadly purpose. The time for observation, and perhaps action, had come. Humanity's trial was about to begin. The diplomatic chamber hums with restrained energy, the weight of history pressing against every word spoken. As Theos prepares his address, the real challenge begins, not in deciphering humanity's past, but in shaping the future before them. Unbeknownst to the gathered leaders, far above in the cold void of space, unseen eyes have already turned toward Sol, and their intentions are far from diplomatic. In a secluded chamber aboard the Kantari diplomatic vessel, Lyra's normally composed features twisted with worry. She paced back and forth, her footsteps echoing against the metallic floor as she held up a data tablet, its screen flickering with encrypted transmissions. Her third finger tapped nervously against the device's casing, a habit she'd developed over centuries of administrative work. The room's dim lighting cast long shadows that seemed to mirror her growing unease. "These messages," she said, her translator struggling to convey her urgency, its lights blinking erratically like a faulty traffic signal. "They bear Moros's signature. Why is he sending coded broadcasts into Earth space? This goes against every protocol we established. He knows better than this. He helped write half these rules. We could be looking at the biggest diplomatic mess in 50 years. Theos's 4 eyes widened, each iris contracting with alarm, the purple rings around them growing darker with stress. "Impossible. The Collective Council explicitly forbade any military action." He reached for the tablet, his long fingers trembling slightly as he scrolled through the data. "These frequencies, they're meant for stealth vessels. The encryption patterns are unmistakable. I've seen them before in the archives. They match old war protocols. The similarities are too exact to be coincidence." Commander Thanatos stood rigid, his military training evident in his precise movements. His jaw clenched tight enough to show the tension in his neck, making the scales there ripple. Moros always seemed extreme in his views, but to act without authorization? He shook his head, mandibles clicking like angry castanets. This could spark an incident, one that might destroy everything we've worked for. Centuries of peace gone in an instant. The death toll would be unimaginable. Down on Earth, Commander Rodriguez paced before a wall of holographic displays, her boots wearing a path in the floor. Her fingers danced across the controls, highlighting suspicious patterns in the defense grid's code. The air hummed with the sound of cooling fans working overtime, fighting against the heat of overworked systems. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she worked, the tension visible in every movement. "Look at this," she called to Reyes, pointing at a cluster of red flags that blinked like angry fireflies. "These data fragments, they're like nothing I've seen before, but they have Cantari markers all over them. Someone's trying to hide their tracks, but not well enough. It's like they wanted us to notice, almost like they're taunting us." Reyes frowned, her dark eyes scanning the anomalies, worry lines creasing her forehead. Should we trust Theos and his team? They've been open so far, but something feels off about this whole situation. Like we're missing a big piece of the puzzle. My gut says there's more going on here. Admiral Jackson needs to know. Rodriguez decided, sending an urgent alert, her fingers stabbing at the console with determined force. The message priority markers glowed an angry red against the screen. Her hands shook slightly as she typed, betraying her worry despite her calm exterior. In the research lab, Nova's crystalline form sparkled under the harsh lights as she worked alongside Kovalov. Their combined analysis revealed ghost signatures, the telltale traces of advanced stealth technology. Screens around them displayed cascading data streams, each one revealing another piece of the puzzle, like digital breadcrumbs leading to an unsettling truth. The air crackled with nervous energy. "This could damage relations permanently," Nova whispered, her voice like chiming glass in the tense atmosphere. Her crystalline structure flickered with worried pulses of light. "But if Moros truly has gone rogue, we can't ignore the signs. The evidence is too strong. We'd be fools to look away now." Kovalev's fingers flew across his keyboard, the clacking sounds filling the room like rapid gunfire. "We can't hide this. Earth's safety comes first. Whatever happens next, we need to be ready. History won't forgive us if we look away now. The stakes are too high for half measures." Suddenly, red warning lights flashed throughout the Defense Command Center, bathing everything in an ominous crimson glow. Rodriguez's screens went dark one by one, like dominoes falling in sequence. The darkness spread across the displays like spilled ink, leaving them blind to whatever might be happening in orbit. "We're losing the orbital defense grid," she shouted, frantically working to restore connections, her hands flying over 3 keyboards at once. "Sector 7 through 12. Complete shutdown. Every backup system's failing. It's like something's eating through our firewalls. They're bypassing everything we've got." The seconds ticked by with excruciating slowness, each moment feeling like an eternity. 90 seconds of blindness, 90 seconds of vulnerability. The only sound was the rapid breathing of the command staff and the occasional beep of dead systems, each noise making them jump like scared rabbits. The air grew thick with fear and anticipation. When the systems finally flickered back to life, Rodriguez's face was grim, her knuckles white on the edge of her console. "That was no accident," she said, voice hard with certainty. "We've been compromised. Someone just tested our defenses. They wanted to see how fast we'd recover, and now they know exactly what we can do and what we can't." In their private chamber, Theos turned to his colleagues, his voice heavy with resignation and tinged with shame. His secondary eyes closed completely, a sign of deep distress among his kind. "We must tell them everything we know about Moros. The time for diplomatic caution is over. Earth deserves the full truth, no matter the cost to the collective's reputation. We owe them that much at least. The consequences of silence would be far worse than any damage to our standing." The conference had ended, but the unease it left in its wake had only just begun. Lyra's datapad buzzed with an encrypted alert, its contents enough to drain the color from her face. Somewhere beyond the reach of standard sensors, something, or someone, had just entered Sol unnoticed. And if it wasn't the collective, then it could only mean one thing. Moros had arrived. Commander Rodriguez stood at attention on the bridge of the EDF stalwart, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Red dots blinked where sensor ghosts suggested cloaked vessels lurking in Earth's outer orbit. Her fingers drummed softly on the console as she analyzed the pattern of movement, noting how the enemy ships seemed to drift in loose formations that almost looked random. But her gut told her otherwise. Years of combat experience had taught her to trust those instincts. "Deploy the drone screen," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tension coiling in her stomach. "Pattern Delta 7. Keep them tight and responsive. Watch for any breaks in their coverage, and someone get me real-time updates on their energy readings." Hundreds of autonomous fighters spread out in a seemingly random formation, their engines glowing like stars against the black. But Rodriguez knew better. Each drone carried specialized sensors and electromagnetic pulse generators, forming an invisible net. She'd spent countless hours perfecting this tactic in simulations, tweaking every detail until it felt right. The drones moved with perfect coordination, each one exactly where it needed to be. "Ma'am, picking up movement at coordinates 227 by 84, her tactical officer reported, voice tight with anticipation. "Multiple signatures moving fast. They're trying to slip through the eastern quadrant." Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. "Spring the trap. Let's show them what Earth can do. All units, stand by for Phase 2. Weapons hot, but hold your fire until my mark." The drones activated their pulse generators in sequence, creating a rippling wave of energy that disrupted the Kantari stealth systems. Like fish caught in a net, several sleek vessels flickered into view, their hull designs unlike anything humanity had seen before. The alien ships gleamed with an almost organic quality, their surfaces shifting in the starlight, plates moving and adjusting like scales on some cosmic serpent. "They're breaking formation," someone shouted from the sensor station. "Scattering in all directions, at least 7 distinct groups. They're trying to outmaneuver the net." "As expected," Rodriguez said calmly, already moving to the next phase of her plan. "Launch decoys. Let's see how they handle some confusion of their own. Keep our formations fluid. Don't let them pin us down. Remember your training, people. We've drilled this 100 times." The battle erupted in earnest. Human and Kantari ships exchanged fire for the first time in history, energy beams and projectiles lighting up the orbital space. The void between worlds became a deadly light show, beautiful and terrifying all at once. Explosions bloomed like silent flowers in the darkness, casting strange shadows across the battlefield. Through it all, Theos's voice crackled over the emergency channel, filled with desperation. "Cease hostilities immediately. This is not sanctioned combat. You risk catastrophic escalation. Both sides must stand down. There are diplomatic channels for this." But the fighting continued. Rodriguez watched as Kovalev's latest combat updates flowed into their systems, the data streams constant and adaptive. The ship's targeting computers adapted in real time, learning from each exchange. Every shot fired made them smarter, more deadly, more unpredictable. The AI systems worked overtime, processing thousands of tactical decisions per second. From his observation post, Commander Thanatos watched in growing alarm, his usual stoic demeanor cracking. "Impossible," he muttered, his composure cracking. "Their ships are evolving their tactics, mid-battle. No species has ever demonstrated such adaptability. This defies all known combat doctrine. They're learning faster than our systems can adjust." The human vessels moved with increasing effectiveness, anticipating Kantari maneuvers that had proven effective only moments before. Each failed attack taught them something new, and Rodriguez's forces pressed every advantage they found. Her crews worked with machine-like efficiency, but with a creativity no AI could match. Admiral Moros, monitoring from his flagship, had seen enough. "All units, disengage and withdraw. We have what we need. Fall back to safe distance. Maintain emergency jump protocols. Do not engage further. Repeat, do not engage." The Kantari scouts pulled back, their cloaking systems re-engaging. But their retreat wasn't perfect. The jump signatures left traces that Earth's sensors could track. Rodriguez had made sure of that, positioning sensor drones specifically to catch these telltale signs. Her trap had worked exactly as planned. "Sir," Rodriguez reported to Admiral Jackson, her voice tight with professional pride. "Confirmed exit vectors. They're leaving the system. We can track their general direction. They're headed toward the Kuiper Belt. Our new sensor arrays caught their jump signatures clear as day." "But they'll be back," Reyes added grimly. "And next time, it won't be just scouts. They'll come prepared. We need to be ready. This was just their opening move." "Begin fortification protocols," Jackson commanded, his voice hard with determination. "All stations, full combat readiness. This was just the beginning, and we'll be damned if we're not ready for what comes next. Rodriguez, I want a full tactical analysis on my desk in an hour. We need to know everything we learned about their capabilities." Theos's hands clenched as the station-wide alert blared through the halls. Unauthorized vessels had been detected in Earth's orbit. The carefully laid foundation of diplomacy trembled beneath them as Rodriguez's fleet scrambled to intercept. In the vast dark beyond, Moros's shadow loomed, the first cut of a blade yet to fully descend. The council chamber's polished marble walls seemed to amplify the tension as Theos and Lyra faced Earth's leadership. Commander Pierce's face was red with barely contained anger, his hands clenched into tight fists at his sides. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long, dramatic shadows across the floor. The air was thick with anticipation, each breath echoing in the silence. "Your ships attacked our defense grid," Pierce said, jabbing a finger at the Kantari delegation. "How do you explain that? We trusted you enough to let you approach Earth, and this is how you repay us." His voice echoed off the walls, filling the chamber with his frustration. Theos's crystalline features reflected his distress, fractal patterns shifting rapidly across his surface. "We had no knowledge of Admiral Moros's actions. The official delegation condemns this unauthorized aggression. We are as shocked as you are. This is not how the collective operates." "Condemns?" Pierce laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and cutting. "Your rogue admiral nearly compromised Earth's entire orbital defense network. One wrong move and we'd be sitting ducks, vulnerable to any attack." Lyra stepped forward, her movements precise and measured, her silver robes rustling softly. "We share your outrage, Commander. Let me help track Moros's command chain. We can prove this was not sanctioned by the collective. Give us a chance to make this right and restore trust between our peoples." Nova cleared her throat from her position near the chamber's research console, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "There's something else we need to discuss." She pulled up a holographic display showing neural pattern analyses, the blue light casting an eerie glow on her face. "My studies suggest that humanity's ability to synchronize in crisis situations might be more significant than previously thought. When faced with extinction-level threats, our species demonstrates unprecedented neural cohesion. It's like we become one mind, united in purpose." Admiral Jackson leaned forward in his chair, the metal creaking under his weight. If Moros fears Earth's rage so much that he'd risk war, perhaps it's time for some clarity on both sides. He fixed Theos with a steady gaze, his weathered face stern but calm. "You want to understand our trigger conditions? Fine. But first, we need to know why Earth was quarantined in the first place. What drove the collective to isolate us?" Theos exchanged glances with Lyra before responding, their species equivalent of a worried look passing between them. "A fair exchange. The collective's archives contain records of the original quarantine decision. We will share them, though some may find the truth unsettling. It's a complex history that deserves careful examination." "And in return," Jackson said, "we'll provide limited data about humanity's near-extinction events. Maybe understanding how we survived will help prevent further misunderstandings." His voice carried a hint of warning, underscoring the seriousness of the situation. Pierce shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the chair squeaking under his restless movements. "Admiral, are you sure about this? Sharing our capabilities with aliens? What if they use it against us?" "If we can't control our own people," Lyra admitted, her voice carrying a note of shame, "we have no right to demand your trust. But perhaps shared knowledge can prevent catastrophe. We must learn from each other to build a stronger, safer future for all." Jackson nodded slowly, his expression grave. "Then let's begin. But understand this. If there are any more unauthorized incursions, Earth will respond with full force. No warnings, no second chances. We will defend ourselves and our allies without hesitation." "Agreed," Theos said solemnly, his crystalline form dimming slightly. "Let us hope knowledge proves stronger than fear. The alternative would be unfortunate for all involved. We must work together to avoid further conflict." The embers of battle still burned in Earth's skies as Theos and the Kantari delegation found themselves summoned to the council chamber. Moros's brazen assault had shattered more than just trust. It had exposed the fragility of this tenuous alliance. Now, standing before humanity's leaders, Theos could feel the weight of a single unspoken question pressing down on them: friend or foe? In the dimly lit data vault, Theos's long fingers danced across the holographic interface. Ancient Kantari glyphs shimmered in the air, casting eerie blue shadows across Nova's face as she studied them intently. The vault's metallic walls seemed to pulse with each new revelation, their polished surfaces reflecting countless streams of data. The room felt alive, breathing with the weight of hidden knowledge that had slumbered here for millennia. "These records," Nova whispered, her eyes widening. "They're from before the quarantine. Way before." Her voice carried a mix of excitement and unease that made the air feel electric. Theos nodded slowly, his normally steady hands pausing for just a moment. "Yes. Records my ancestors sealed away, deemed too dangerous for common access. Even I had to break several protocols to reach them." He glanced nervously at the door as if expecting security drones to burst in at any moment. The vault's climate control hummed softly as they worked side by side, matching Earth's restricted war logs with the ancient Kantari archives. Nova's hands trembled slightly as she pulled up humanity's darkest moments, times when entire civilizations teetered on the brink. The air grew thick with tension as each new file opened, the weight of forgotten history pressing down on them both. "Look at this pattern," she said, pointing to a data cluster, her finger tracing the ghostly lines. "Every time humanity faced extinction, something changed, like we hit some kind of hidden switch." Her voice cracked with the enormity of what she was seeing. The holograms shifted, showing devastating scenes from 300,000 years ago. Entire continents wrapped in fire, oceans boiling, the sky itself torn apart. The images flickered and danced, each more terrifying than the last. The display cast strange shadows on the walls, making the vault feel like a tomb of forgotten nightmares. By the first ones, Theos breathed, taking an involuntary step backward. His usual composure cracked as the images played out, his face a mask of awe and fear. "Your species, you didn't just survive. You evolved. All of you. Together. Like a single organism adapting to a threat." His fingers twitched, as if trying to grasp the impossible truth before them. Nova's fingers flew across the interface, overlaying the ancient footage with modern neural mapping data. Her movements became more urgent with each new connection. Not just physical adaptation. Our minds, they synchronized. Connected. Every human, moving as one. Like a giant network switching on. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she worked, the implications making her hands shake. "Like a singular consciousness," Theos said softly, his voice filled with wonder and dread. "Born from the flames of extinction, a defense mechanism beyond anything we've ever seen." His perfect recall was working overtime, trying to process the flood of new information that challenged everything he knew. They watched in silence as the historical record showed advanced civilizations crumbling before this unified human response. Not through malice or aggression, but through an unprecedented evolutionary leap that rippled across space itself. The data streams painted a picture of power beyond measure, of change beyond understanding. The holograms cast their blue light in waves, making the vault feel like they were underwater, drowning in revelations. That's why they quarantined us, Nova realized, her voice barely audible. Not because we were evil. Her hands fell limply to her sides as the truth sank in. The weight of understanding seemed to physically push her down. But because you were unstoppable, Theos finished, his professional detachment completely gone. When threatened as one, you evolved as one. Nothing could predict or counter it. No defense could hold. His voice carried the heavy tone of someone whose entire worldview had just been shattered. The final archive entry materialized before them, ancient glyphs crystallizing into a single, chilling phrase. It is not a weapon we fear, but the unstoppable synergy of their minds. The words hung in the air like a death sentence, their meaning echoing through centuries of carefully maintained isolation. In the silence that followed, even the vault's gentle hum seemed to fade away, as if the room itself held its breath at the terrible truth. Theos's fingers hovered over the ancient archive controls, the chamber bathed in the cold glow of forgotten history. The deeper they dug, the more the past began to resemble a warning rather than a mere recollection. As the final translation locked into place, a single phrase echoed in his mind, heavier than any weapon could ever be. It is not a weapon we fear, but the unstoppable synergy of their minds. In Earth's orbital headquarters, Admiral Jackson stood before a sprawling tactical display. The holographic map showed their solar system, with red markers indicating Moros's last known positions. His jaw clenched as he watched another cluster of signals appear near Jupiter's orbit, like hungry wolves circling their prey. So that's why they locked us away, Rhea said quietly, reviewing Nova and Theos's findings on a datapad. She shook her head in disbelief, her fingers tightening around the device. Not because we were evil, but because we could change, evolve, adapt, unite. Jackson's weathered face was grim. He traced a finger along the defense line they'd established near Mars, where Earth ships waited like a wall of steel and determination. And now Moros knows it too. Commander Pierce paced the room, his boots clicking against the metal floor. The sound echoed through the tense atmosphere like a metronome counting down to war. The public would panic if this got out. Finding out we're basically walking doomsday devices, there'd be chaos in the streets. People would lose their minds. Classified, Jackson decided firmly. He straightened his uniform with practiced authority, squaring his shoulders against the weight of command. Level 0. We focus on immediate defense preparations. Kovalev nodded from his station, fingers flying over multiple screens. Strings of code reflected in his glasses, casting an eerie glow on his focused face. I'm already reinforcing our neural firewalls. If Moros tries another systems breach, he'll get a nasty surprise. Please, Theos interrupted, his tall frame seeming to shrink with worry. His typically formal posture slumped, his voice carrying centuries of diplomatic experience. Must we repeat the errors of the past? Your species has such potential for growth, for partnership with the collective. War will only breed more hatred. A flash of static cut through every screen in the command center. The tactical display flickered and dissolved, replaced by the stern face of Admiral Moros. His black eyes gleamed with zealous determination, his features twisted with disgust like he was looking at something rotten. People of Earth, his voice boomed through the speakers, dripping with contempt. Your quarantine was no accident. You are an abomination that threatens the natural order of our galaxy. I speak now with the authority of the Purifier Fleet. You have one standard rotation to surrender your world for cleansing, or face complete extinction. Commander Thanatos, watching from his own ship, activated a secure channel to Archon Atlas. His hands trembled slightly as he made the call, his military training warring with his sense of justice. "My lord," he said gravely, "Moros has gone too far. We must act now to prevent this madness, before it consumes us all." The broadcast continued, Moros's words echoing through every communication device on and around Earth. "Choose wisely, humans. Surrender to sterilization, or watch your species burn." The transmission cut off, leaving a heavy silence in the command center. Jackson looked around at his officers, seeing the same steel resolve in their eyes that he felt in his heart. The air hummed with unspoken determination, thick with the electricity of imminent battle. "Well," he said quietly, running a hand through his gray hair, a hint of a fierce smile playing at his lips. "I guess the choice has been made for us. Time to show them why they were right to fear us in the first place." The weight of the past bore down on Theos as he relayed his findings to Admiral Jackson. If the records were true, humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology, nor their armies. It was their ability to evolve together under threat. And now, as Moros's ultimatum crackled through the Sol system, that evolution was about to be tested once more. Commander Rodriguez stood at her tactical station, her fingers dancing across holographic controls, her eyes sharp and focused like a hawk tracking prey. "Drone swarms Alpha through Delta, initiate scatter pattern. Make them chase shadows. Let's show them how slippery humans can be. Spread out like buckshot, make every fake signature count." Thousands of small craft spread across space like a glittering web, each one a tiny piece in her grand deception. Each drone projected false signatures, making Earth's defensive line appear 10 times larger than reality. Some drones mimicked damaged ships, others showed phantom fleet movements. The enemy would waste precious time and resources shooting at ghosts, while the real threat lurked in plain sight. "They're coming in hot," Reyes reported, his voice tight with tension. "Multiple hyperspace signatures at the system's edge. Looks like they brought the whole family to dinner. And Grandma's cooking wasn't even that good." In the command center, Admiral Jackson's face was carved from stone, jaw set with determination. A muscle twitched in his cheek as he watched the tactical display. "Humanity will not bow to threats. Send our response to Moros. Earth stands ready. Let them learn what happens when they corner us. We're not their prey. We're their worst nightmare." Grand Archivist Theos's voice crackled over the comms, tinged with desperation. His usual scholarly calm had cracked like thin ice. "Please, there's still time to prevent catastrophe. I'm broadcasting an emergency appeal to the Collective Council. This violence serves no purpose. Centuries of peace hang in the balance." "Got your back on that," Nova added, her fingers flying over her console like a pianist in concert. Streams of data flowed under her touch, pushing the transmission through every channel we've got. The galaxy needs to see this. No one can claim they didn't know what happened here. History's got its eyes on all of us. Commander Rodriguez watched her tactical display light up with new contacts, a deadly light show of incoming threats. Red dots bloomed like angry flowers across her screen. "First wave incoming. Implementing countermeasures now. Time to make them dance to our tune. Let's show them some old Earth hospitality." The space around Earth transformed into a deadly maze of traps and tricks. Electronic warfare pods activated, creating corridors of interference that would confuse and disorient. Kovalev's new warp lattice system allowed Earth ships to appear and disappear at will, striking from unexpected vectors like ghosts in the night. Each hit-and-run attack left the enemy swinging at shadows. "Multiple hits on enemy vessels," Rodriguez reported with fierce satisfaction, punching the air. "The micro-jump tactics are working. They can't pin us down. We're the mosquito they can't swat. Keep them guessing, people." But Moros's forces were powerful, their technological advantage clear. A purifier beam lanced through space, bright as a newborn star, vaporizing 3 Earth destroyers in one shot. The beam cut through shields like paper. Emergency beacons flashed as escape pods scattered like seeds in a storm, carrying precious human cargo to safety. "Casualties in Sector 7. Reyes called out, grief mixing with anger in his voice. His hands clenched into fists. The purifiers are pushing through our outer defense line. They're not falling for the old tricks anymore. They're learning too fast. Jackson's voice remained steady as bedrock. Hold the line. Rodriguez, deploy the second wave of countermeasures. Show them why they should have stayed home. Make them work for every inch of space. New tactic engaging, Rodriguez confirmed, a wolf's smile on her face. Hidden missile platforms activated, launching swarms of electromagnetically shielded projectiles. The weapons curved through space in impossible patterns, confounding purifier targeting systems with their unpredictable dance. Each missile rode its own path through the void. More ships dropped out of hyperspace. Moros's forces were committing to the attack in full force. The void filled with their war machines, gleaming and deadly. Earth's defenders fought with everything they had, mixing cunning with raw courage, but for every purifier ship they damaged, another took its place like heads of a hydra. The odds grew longer with each passing minute. The battle raged across the solar system, humanity's ingenuity against overwhelming firepower. It wasn't enough to win, but it was enough to survive. For now. And sometimes, survival was victory enough. They would live to fight another day, and that was all that mattered. As the last echoes of Moros's ultimatum faded, the silence that followed was not one of surrender, but of grim determination. Across Earth, weapons powered up, defenses activated, and fleets aligned in a singular act of defiance. The time for diplomacy had passed. Theos watched as Sul prepared for war, a war that, if history held true, humanity would not fight alone. They would fight as one. The orbital shipyards near Mars burned, their once gleaming hulls now reduced to molten slag. Twisted metal and frozen debris formed a deadly cloud where proud vessels once docked, the wreckage spinning lazily in the void. Emergency crews in radiation-hardened suits pulled survivors from the wreckage, their helmet lights cutting through the darkness like desperate fireflies in an endless night. The rescue workers moved with frantic urgency, knowing every second could mean another life lost to the vacuum. "Status report," Jackson demanded, her face lit by the red emergency lighting of the command center. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she gripped the edge of the tactical display. Her knuckles had gone white from the pressure. 3,000 injured, 800 missing, Reyes replied, his voice hollow. His hands shook as he scrolled through the casualty lists. Yards 4 through 7 are total losses. The civilian evacuation ships. He paused, steadying himself against the console. Most got away, but not all of them. The words caught in his throat as faces of people he knew scrolled past on his screen. On the main display, fresh waves of purifier ships advanced in perfect formation, their silver hulls reflecting the light of distant explosions. Their weapons carved burning lines across space, methodically destroying anything in their path with cold efficiency. The formations moved like a well-rehearsed dance of death, each ship knowing its role in the destruction. Commander Thanatos watched from his vessel, horror growing in his chest as the destruction unfolded. "Theos," he called over their private channel, his military composure cracking. "This is madness. Moros isn't testing their defenses anymore. He means to trigger exactly what we feared. This goes against everything we stand for." His fists clenched at his sides as another explosion lit up his viewport. "I know," Theos replied, his usually measured voice shaking with barely contained emotion. "But what can we do? He's already targeting their population centers. The casualties are mounting by the minute." The archivists' centuries of studied neutrality were crumbling in the face of such wholesale slaughter. On Earth, citizens huddled in reinforced shelters as distant explosions lit up the sky like artificial dawn. News feeds showed burning cities, New Geneva's crystal towers melting, Neo-Tokyo's arcology domes cracking, Armstrong Base on Luna venting atmosphere into space. The death toll climbed with terrifying speed. Parents held their children close, trying to shield young eyes from the horror unfolding above. In a secured bunker, Kovalev noticed something strange on her monitors. Scientists worldwide were reporting the same phenomenon, breakthrough insights appearing simultaneously across different facilities. Teams that had never communicated were reaching identical conclusions about weapons upgrades, shield modifications, and propulsion advances. It was as if someone had opened a tap of pure knowledge, and discoveries were pouring out like water. "It's starting," Nova whispered, watching neural activity readings spike across global monitors. Her hands trembled as she analyzed the data. Just like the archives showed, when the Mindanians threatened Earth with biological weapons, humans developed unified immunity in weeks. When the Forge worlds attacked, they mastered plasma physics overnight. History's repeating itself. Her voice held equal parts fear and awe. Now, that same acceleration was building like a thunderstorm about to break. In labs and workshops, engineers found their thoughts connecting across vast distances, sharing solutions they hadn't known they had. Quantum formulae solved themselves in shared dreams, dancing through collective consciousness. Children sketched advanced targeting algorithms in their school notebooks without understanding why, their young minds caught in the rising tide. Mechanics woke from naps with complete blueprints in their heads. "The neural sync is spreading," Theos reported urgently, his voice tight with worry. "Thanatos, their minds are linking up. If Moros pushes any harder, we might not be able to stop what comes next." The ancient archivist's hands flew over his console, recording everything for posterity. Another salvo rocked the planet, lighting up the atmosphere with deadly fire. In that moment, billions of humans felt something shift in their consciousness, a soft hum of shared purpose, growing stronger by the second, like a rising chorus of mental voices joining in harmony. The sensation spread like wildfire through dreams and waking thoughts alike. Earth's rage wasn't hatred or anger. It was something far more powerful. The entire species thinking, innovating, and evolving as one unstoppable force. Like a sleeping giant finally opening its eyes, humanity's true potential began to stir. The air itself seemed to crackle with possibility. The time of individual genius was over. Humanity's collective mind was awakening, and the universe would never be the same. In labs and bunkers worldwide, the first ripples of their shared consciousness began to manifest in ways that would reshape reality itself. The first battle had left scars, but the war had only just begun. As rescue teams scrambled through the wreckage and tactical minds reeled from the sheer force of Moros's assault, something far more profound was beginning to stir. In every research facility, every command center, and every civilian hub, minds worked in unison, faster, sharper, more synchronized than ever before. The storm of adaptation had begun. Admiral Jackson stared at his display in disbelief. Data streamed in faster than he could process it. Weapon designs, shield configurations, battle strategies. They poured in from everywhere. Research stations, civilian homes, deep space habitats, even makeshift labs in underground bunkers. His hands trembled as he tried to keep up with the flood of information appearing on screen after screen, each display blinking with urgent updates and breakthrough discoveries. "Sir," Reyes's voice cracked with amazement, "you need to see this. The city defense grids, they're linking together on their own, creating some kind of unified shield mesh. We never programmed them to do this. It's like they're talking to each other. Look, Boston just linked with New York and now Tokyo's joining in." In Kovalev's labs, engineers moved with eerie synchronization. Prototypes materialized at impossible speeds, each innovation building on the last. Scientists who had never met finished each other's equations, their minds somehow connected across vast distances. Coffee cups sat cold and forgotten as ideas flowed faster than anyone could write them down. Blueprints practically drew themselves as researchers worked in perfect harmony. "It's happening," Theos whispered, his face pale as he watched from the command center. Just like the ancient texts warned, they're evolving. The forbidden knowledge was true all along. His hands clutched the edge of the console until his knuckles turned white. We should have known. The signs were there. Commander Rodriguez felt it too. battle plans flowing through her mind with crystal clarity. She knew exactly where each ship needed to be, how each weapon should fire. Without speaking, every captain and pilot in the fleet understood their role in the greater strategy. The complex dance of ships felt as natural as breathing. Her usual tactical genius merged with thousands of other minds, creating something greater than she'd ever imagined. "This is impossible," Thanatos muttered, monitoring the transformation from his observation post. Their ships are reconfiguring mid-battle. The crews are operating as one mind. He watched in horror as human vessels moved in perfect harmony like a school of fish. Each movement flowed into the next with impossible grace. Moros's voice boomed across the command channel. "Deploy the Purifier dreadnoughts. Crush them now before—" But his words cut short as he watched Earth's missiles transform during flight, their guidance systems rewriting themselves to counter Purifier defenses. Each shot that missed taught the whole fleet new patterns instantly. The missiles twisted and changed like living things, adapting and evolving with each passing second. The newly forged Earth defense fleet surged from its docking bays. Ships bristled with technologies that hadn't existed hours ago, weapons that defied known physics, shields that adapted to every impact. The fleet moved as one organism, guided by humanity's shared consciousness. Every vessel seemed to glow with an inner light, pulsing in sync like a heartbeat. "By the Archons," Thanatos breathed as he watched the transformed fleet tear through Moros's second wave. The Purifier lines shattered under attacks they couldn't comprehend. Humanity had become something entirely new, not through rage or fury, but through perfect, unstoppable unity. Their ships danced through space like silver fish in a cosmic sea, leaving destruction in their wake. Each movement was poetry, each attack a masterpiece of coordination that no single mind could have conceived. Jackson stared in awe at the flood of breakthroughs pouring in from across the planet. This wasn't mere strategy, it was something far greater, something terrifying in its sheer inevitability. Theos could only watch as humanity shifted, evolved, became something more. The rage was no myth, no ancient fear. It was happening, right before his eyes. The battle near Saturn was unlike anything in human history. Commander Rodriguez watched from her command deck as Earth's newly transformed fleet moved with uncanny skill through the gas giants' glittering rings, their hulls catching the dim sunlight like silver fish in a cosmic stream. The massive planet's golden-orange glow painted their ships in ethereal light, making them look almost supernatural against the star-studded backdrop. "All ships execute pattern Delta," she ordered, her fingers drumming a steady rhythm on the command console. The words had barely left her mouth when the fleet responded as one living organism. Ships morphed their configurations mid-flight, weapon pods shifting and recombining in a deadly dance that defied traditional tactics. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Thanatos, now at her side, shook his head in wonder, his alien features twisted in disbelief. His mandibles clicked softly as he spoke. 3 centuries of quarantine data. We never realized you'd unlock our weaknesses so fast. Your species learns at an alarming rate. It's like watching evolution in fast forward. Moros's dreadnoughts launched another barrage, their weapons lighting up space like artificial stars. But this time, the human warheads changed course mid-flight, their programming rewriting itself to counter Kantari jamming signals. Where one countermeasure failed, 10 new solutions spawned instantly, adapting faster than any AI could track. The space between the ships became a light show of explosions and counter-explosions. Their rear shields are weakest at the power junction, Thanatos pointed out, his voice heavy with resignation. His clawed hand traced the pattern on the tactical display. A remnant of an old design flaw we never fully fixed. Your kind spotted it within hours. It took our engineers decades to even notice it. Rodriguez nodded, feeling the collective knowledge of Earth's awakened consciousness flowing through her like an electric current. Her mind buzzed with the combined insight of billions. "All units, Focus fire on grid sectors 7 through 9. Hit them where it hurts. Show them what happens when you back humans into a corner. The unified drone swarms moved like schools of fish, thousands of small craft acting with single-minded purpose. They slipped through gaps in Kantari defenses that existed for microseconds, exploiting vulnerabilities that only became visible through humanity's heightened awareness. Each movement was perfect, each strike devastating. The void between Saturn's rings became their hunting ground. Archon Atlas's reinforcement fleet arrived through hyperspace, weapons ready. The new ships emerged like ghosts from the void, their hull designs ancient and intimidating. But they pulled up short, watching in awe as Earth's vessels danced through space with impossible grace, weaving between Saturn's rings like they were born to it. By the Ancient Ones, Atlas's voice crackled over the comm, tinged with awe and fear. His transmission carried undertones of static and disbelief. We came to assist, but this is beyond anything we imagined. We'll hold off additional purifier forces instead. This battle is yours. We dare not interfere. Moros's flagship listed to one side, its main engines crippled by the relentless assault. Sparks and debris floated in the void around it. Rodriguez grabbed her tactical gear, checking the seals with practiced efficiency. Strike team, prepare for boarding. We're taking the bridge. Show them what Earth Marines can do. Remember your training, and trust in our shared strength. The boarding was swift and decisive. Earth's Marines moved with perfect coordination, each soldier instantaneously aware of their teammates' positions and intentions. They flowed through the Kantari vessel's corridors like water, neutralizing resistance before it could form. Their boots barely made a sound on the metal decking as they advanced. When they breached the bridge, Moro stood rigid with fury, his alien armor gleaming under the emergency lights. Warning klaxons wailed in the background. "You fools!" he raged as Rodriguez's team secured the command center, their movements fluid and unstoppable. "Don't you see? The galaxy will never be the same now that Earth's power is unleashed." Rodriguez kept her weapon trained on him, feeling the combined strength of humanity flowing through her veins like liquid fire. The targeting laser painted a steady red dot on his chest plate. "You're right about one thing," she said, her voice steady and cold. "The galaxy won't be the same. But that's because you forced our hand. You should have just said hello. We would have been happy to be friends." Moros's fleet, once the harbinger of annihilation, now found itself on the defensive against an enemy that refused to be predictable. Every Kantari formation was countered before it could fully deploy. Every weapon found itself outpaced by an opponent that moved with eerie precision. As the second wave of Earth's fleet surged forward, it was clear. This was no ordinary resistance. This was evolution in real time. The debris of Moros's shattered fleet drifted through Saturn's rings like scattered diamonds, glittering in the pale sunlight. Metal fragments and twisted hull plates spun lazily through space, mixing with the ancient ice crystals. On Earth's command carrier, Admiral Jackson watched the tactical display intently as the last pockets of purifier resistance surrendered one by one to the combined Earth-Kantari forces, their weapons powered down in final defeat. Red warning icons blinked out across the screen, replaced by peaceful green surrender markers. "It's over," Reyes said softly, her hands trembling slightly as she lowered them from her console. "We actually did it." Her voice carried equal measures of disbelief and bone-deep weariness. She slumped back in her chair, letting out a long breath she felt like she'd been holding for days. Across Earth and its colonies, the intense neural synchronization that had driven humanity's explosive evolution began to ebb like a retreating tide. Scientists who had worked for days without rest suddenly felt their exhaustion hit them like a physical wave, their minds fuzzy and bodies aching. Engineers who had designed impossible weapons in mere hours found their thoughts becoming their own again, the shared consciousness falling away like a dissolving dream. Many simply collapsed where they stood, finally giving in to days of missed sleep. In the high-security holding cell, Moro sat in silence as Theos visited him, his once proud posture now defeated. The fallen admiral's shoulders sagged beneath his ornate uniform. "The collective will demand your execution," Theos said, his voice heavy with the weight of centuries. "But that would be a mistake. Your actions, however misguided, came from the ancient warnings. We must learn from this, not bury it. History demands truth, not vengeance." Moros didn't respond, his gaze fixed on the floor. Nova worked frantically in her lab, recording measurements as humanity's unified consciousness began to fade, her fingers flying across multiple screens. Coffee cups and energy drink cans littered her workspace. "The neural patterns are incredible," she told Theos, pointing to her readings with barely contained excitement. "Nothing in Kantari physiology comes close to this level of species-wide synchronization. They're truly unique. It's like watching 1,000 rivers flow back into separate streams. Look at these brainwave patterns." Archon Atlas's hologram towered over the projection field, his voice resolute. "The Purifier faction acted without authority. Their actions do not represent the collective. Purifier sympathizers, stand down. This ends now. Further resistance will be met with severe consequences." His words echoed across thousands of worlds. In the Sol system, change swept over humanity like a cool breeze after fever. The desperate edge of survival softened. Weapon systems stabilized, ship designs ceased mutating, and the frantic pace of innovation slowed to a manageable speed, leaving behind advances that would have taken decades. "I can think clearly again," Kovalev muttered in her lab, rubbing her temples with a tired smile. "The designs, they're still there, but they're not burning in my mind anymore." Commander Rodriguez watched her crew blinking as if waking from a trance. The supernatural coordination that had driven them in battle faded, replaced by professional efficiency. Relief settled in. "Back to being regular humans," she sighed. "Though I guess regular means something different now." Thanatos observed Earth's defense grid, antennae twitching. The forced evolution is subsiding. Without the extinction threat, they're returning to baseline, though that baseline is significantly higher. They've done in days what most species take centuries to accomplish. As the neural link dissipated, exhaustion gripped Earth. People collapsed into chairs, fell asleep at desks, wherever they stood as the shared consciousness faded. Humanity had survived, evolved, and proven itself. Now, they could rest. In the Great Hall of New Geneva, the weight of war shifted to the weight of justice. Moros, unrepentant, faced his reckoning. Across the chamber, Theos and Jackson exchanged a silent look, not of victory, but of understanding. Earth was no longer a quarantined world. It was a force the galaxy could never ignore again. The tribunal chamber hummed with tension. Massive windows framed Earth's blue sphere, a stark contrast to the grim proceedings. Representatives of dozens of species formed a living tapestry of galactic diversity. Grand Archivist Theos sat alongside Atlas, Admiral Jackson, and Commander Pierce, fingers tapping anxiously. Centuries of isolation pressed upon them. Moros stood defiant, stripped of rank. "I acted to protect the galaxy from a force that could destroy everything," he declared. "History will vindicate me." Atlas's hologram shimmered with contained fury. "History will remember you as the one who nearly sparked the very catastrophe you claimed to prevent." He turned to the assembly. "The Collective Council denounces Purifier extremism. Earth has proven itself not just powerful but wise. Humanity is welcomed as equals into the galactic family." Theos rose, voice steady but touched with regret. "For centuries we caged humanity out of fear. Their unity in crisis isn't a weapon, it's a gift. One we failed to understand." Earth's defenders spoke of alliances, scientific cooperation, and shared dreams. Commander Pierce stepped forward last, his battle scars fresh. Earth's rage was called a myth, a horror story. Now it is revealed as truth, not destruction but ultimate solidarity. His voice softened. "They once feared our rage. Now they pray it never returns. The choice, creation or destruction, is ours to make." If you enjoyed the story of Jonathan, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.